Today we're talking with Roland Martin, founder and CEO of Black Star Network.
What's happening?
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So let's start talking about the racial wealth gap. Okay. Now, a lot's been written since the social justice protests. So, what do you think the pandemic did to the racial wealth gap?
Well, first and foremost, what the pandemic did was it actually exposed in many ways the inequities we have in this country. I remember talking to a white woman who was a board member of Montgomery School District, and she talked about how they saw where you had white students who could afford iPads, who could afford laptops, remote learning. They had to then take school buses and turn them into portable Wi-Fi stations and park them in different areas around Montgomery because depending upon if you were black and you're low income, you didn't have the same level of connectivity. People walk around and assume that everybody has 5G. Folks assume everybody has 4G, not realizing there are a lot of places they don't have that. That's a question of money. Now you talk about laptops and iPads. That's a question of money. And so when you talk about downloading certain apps, that's a question of money, especially if it's a subscription-based app. And so what COVID did was show us exactly, the problems that we had. People were like, we can easily make the switch, the adjustment to online learning. Oh, no more meetings, shift to Zoom, shift to Microsoft Teams, shift to Google Meet. Then all of a sudden it was, that's a problem if I can't connect and my connection can't be consistent. And so you take that, and then, of course, COVID exposed the health inequalities, which is also about economics. And then it exposed the difference between those the people who were traveling in, who no longer go into work. And then all of a sudden, they didn't have an option. So then you had the frontline workers. They had to go in. They couldn't afford to be able to sit at home and do their job from home because that's not what their job is. And so it showed America, as the Kerner Commission report said in 1968, there are two Americas, one white, one black, and that often comes down to money. But it also shows you a whole bunch of broke white folks. And so same thing. And so it showed the racial wealth wealth gap, but it also showed you the class wealth gap as well.
Okay, let's talk about housing for a minute, okay? Because housing is such a huge part of our wealth.
Yep.
And up to 50%, maybe more. But we're still trying to recover from the 2008
53% of black wealth was lost.
Okay. So how can we regain black housing wealth?
Well, one of the things that happened, and I was actually saying it in real time. I remember being on CNN and TV One, and matter of fact, I'll never forget. We were at at the upfronts with CNN in 2009, and so we're sitting on stage, and I'm on stage. It's David Gergen, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, John King. It's Mary Matlin, and it was several more of us. And I remember David Gergen made this comment about, he's talking to these CEOs and they're saying how things are getting better. And I said, well, I'm talking to CEOs of households, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I said, it's a whole different world that we're talking about here, two different worlds. And what people have to go back and remember, everything then was about toxic assets. And Wall Street, they were all about, man, if we could just get these toxic assets off of our books. So the federal government threw all this money, trillions of dollars, in the financial sector. So what do the banks do? They said, well, man, so we got our books straight. We're good. We've used the infusion to get our books straight. They held onto the housing. Now, I'll never forget, Jessica Yellen was at CNN. She did a story and on people who were trying to get help with their homes and showed the problems they had in the plan. And I remember having the Secretary of HUD on, Sean Donovan. And I think he came on my TV One show, I think it was the third time. It was a new housing plan. I said, well, Sean, if this is your third plan, I mean, the other two failed. And he sort of looked at me, and it did. The initial housing program that President Obama launched shortly after he took office was an abysmal failure, because part of the deal was they had to call banks ahead of time for surprise inspections. I'm sorry, what the hell is a surprise? I get to call you ahead of time. And so I never forget, I remember Sean saying, sticks and carrots, sticks, I said, what are you talking about? I said, dude, these banks are screwing people. There was a moment, we had a moment, and the moment was in the book Confidence Men. The moment that was there where President Obama literally could have completely altered Wall Street. But they were too afraid to go that hard. He was too afraid to go that hard. So the end result is all these Wall Street firms held onto these housing stock. Then all of a sudden when the economy improved, they still own them. They then sell lots of 25 and 30,000 homes to private equity. So now, if you're first-time home buyer, Sean and Kim, now all of a sudden you can't compete against private equity money to buy that home. So what is the end result? Not only did we lose homes, people ended up going from owning to renting. Now all of a sudden, rental costs have exploded, and so you can't compete. And where are they buying these homes? They're buying these homes in Florida. They're buying these homes in the Sun Belt. And so now all of a sudden, they're sitting back making like a fat rat, making billions of dollars. They're forcing America into renting, and then you haven't had the federal government provide the necessary incentives for builders. So now we're sitting on a 2 million home deficit. And so people are now paying. When I bought my house in the Dallas suburb of Cedar Hill, December of 1999, my house was, I think I bought, it was $122,000. I remember high interest rate and everything. My monthly mortgage was $1,300. You got people who are paying rent that are $1,500, $1,700, $1,800, $2,000 that literally can own a home. But here's the crazy part, and this is when I knew, man, we got a serious problem. For the past 2 years, I have gotten hundreds of text messages from people offering to buy my house in cash. They text me, my wife, my dad, my mom, my sister, trying to get me to sell. And that's where they are. Because we are in such a shortage, but it is screwing black people because they're having to rent, which means no equity, no ownership, and they're spending more money renting than they are when they were owning. And we have not had real housing policy. I remember sitting on CNN in 2012, and I remember, so it was Mitt Romney and Obama. We on the air, and I blast Mitt Romney for not having a housing policy. And John King goes, Roland, I think you're wrong there. I was like, no, John, I think I'm right. I had just written a column for CNN.com. I went through this man's entire website. It was no housing plan. And we went to break, and we had this argument back and forth, and Anderson was like, well, we're not going to solve it now. I was like, yeah, he wrong, though. So during the break, I went to his website again. They came back, and I was like, hey, John, by the way, still ain't no housing plan on the website. You have not seen, and even when Obama's second term, you did not have a real strong federal housing policy. 2016, obviously, idiot Trump wins, no policy, and even right now, you still do not have an aggressive housing plan to deal with this problem, and it is contributing to wealth inequality. It's making it worse.
Okay, so what does that mean in terms of us transferring generational wealth to our kids?
It means we have nothing to transfer. My parents retired early. Both will be 75 this year. For the past decade, or 12 years, they've lived rent-free in the house that I own. I'll pay the property taxes. Major things happen, I'll pay for it, but they pay for lights, all the rest of that stuff. My sister still lives in the house. So now we got 2 generations. Her daughter lives within the house. That's 3 generations. One of my nieces just came. So by me owning my home, paying it off, I have 3 generations of my family living in one home, which means they are now able to, what they earn, they can now stretch their money in a different way because they're not having to pay rent. That's what owning a home does.
Okay, so let's stay on generational wealth for a minute.
Yep.
Okay, so why don't black folks have wills and estate plans?
It's interesting. I talk to people, and I'll talk to African Americans, and a lot of us go the easy route when it comes to taxes, 1040. Not realizing that you can pay somebody to do your taxes. Man, I can't. Now think about it. I can't afford to pay someone to do my taxes, but then you're looking at a refund. That's how you pay for your taxes. Mm-hmm. That's one. So the idea of now having to pay someone to do something like that is just like, we see that as another expense. So that's one. And 2, for a lot of people, they don't think they have anything. They literally don't think that they have anything that's of value. So our economic condition is different. So on the wills part, there is just this idea that we don't have jack. So I ain't got nothing to give to you. And so then it's just y'all sort of figure it out. That's what it comes down to. It's an information thing. We are, I mean, as we sit right now, we do not sit far from the Freedmen's Bank. And with people who have no understanding, I did a panel a few years ago with John Hope Bryant, Bernice King, Ambassador Andrew Young. And it was celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Freedmen's Bank. Well, the Freedmen's Bureau was set up to specifically provide financial literacy to freed slaves. Lincoln gets assassinated 2 months after. First of all, he gets assassinated shortly after the end of the war. The Freedmen's Bureau opens. The next president, violent racist, doesn't give a damn. Frederick Douglass gives the equivalent, I think it's $10 or $20 million to the Freedmen's Bank. It fails. It just, and then of course, as Skip Gates laid out in his documentary, today's value of $3 billion worth of money of freed slaves was stolen, and there was never a bailout. So what have we had consistently? This is what we've had consistently as African Americans. We've had a period of success, goes down. You look at the history of black people in this country, period, down, up, down, up, down. You look at what happened during Reconstruction, in 1877, the Great Compromise of 1876 leads to, actually 1876, Great Compromise of 1877 leads to Jim Crow. So owning land, KKK, running black folks out of town, literally leaving land. So we've had this yo-yo. Lynching, jealous of black success, financial success. Ida B. Wells Barnett wrote about it. Tearing down of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, black economic success. If you look at our history, so then you go through 1960, the second Reconstruction. Coming out of that, affirmative action, first wave of black people in corporate America, black mayors, Marion Barry in D.C., Coleman Young in D.C., Coleman Young in Detroit, Maynard Jackson in Atlanta, Hatcher in Gary, Indiana, using the power of politics to change economics, doing very well in the 70s. Reagan gets elected in 1980. Supreme Court decision, cutting back affirmative action. Clinton becomes president, the height of black home ownership, then all of a sudden, the crisis hits in 2007, then 2008, then goes from 2009, 10, and 11. We've never, in the history of America, African Americans have never had a 20-plus year consecutive period of sustained economic growth. That's a generation. That's the answer. So we are literally, folks are walking around having no real understanding of money, of capitalism. We are used to getting a check and spending. That's all we've known. And so there's a massive lack of information, disinformation, misinformation that's going on that also contributes to this very issue.
Okay, so we're touching on financial literacy. Okay, now how? Okay, let's talk about well, one, getting parents to talk to their children about finances and money. What are some of the issues?
But remember, that's finances and money, Rodney.
And some granted that some parents don't even have the knowledge.
But
to
Rodney,
transfer.
but our parents are also, many families aren't talking to their children even about health issues. You have black families who don't talk about cancers, who don't talk about health issues. And because there's this thing of, well, you know, we don't want to tell the kids about that. No, you have to have, I keep saying this here, there has to be a massive reprogramming of black America. A reprogramming to remove white supremacy out, but also a massive reprogramming. But my 6 nieces live with me, and they were going to online school, but was on homeschooling them. So about each one of them Mac computers. I said, let me explain to y'all how much these cost. I need you to know that this is the most expensive thing you ever had in your life. These are $2,000 each. So I take my 6 nieces to church, and we're in the car. And they're like, okay, Uncle Robert, where we going to eat? I said, 3 of y'all old enough to cook. They're like, what do you mean? You know, after church, we always go out to eat with Aunt Jackie. I said, well, Aunt Jackie ain't here. So we're in the car. I said, all right, let's do some math. I said, how many of you in the car? 6, plus me, 7. Got it. We go to the restaurant. What's going to be the average order? I said, let's say $20. How much is that? I can see them in the back trying to count. I said, 7 times 20. Come on. Y'all come on. So they sitting here. Okay, 140. Got it. What's the tip? 15, 20%. Tell me that. So they come with the number. I said, now, multiply that by 4. I said, then by 12. So they give him the number. I said, how many tutors y'all got? Oh, we got, I said, y'all got 3 of them, because there's 6 of y'all. I said, this is how much they cost per month. This is what that cost. And they're sitting here. I said, so I need you to understand, you eating on Sunday, I said, is the equivalent, I said, over the year, one of your tutors. So we're sitting here going, and they're like, damn. So I'm forcing them. My deal is, y'all are going to understand what the cost of these things are. Another niece called me. She wanted to go to amusement park with her friends, and with her family, San Antonio, from Dallas, San Antonio. So she comes to me for money. I said, okay. I said, when does school start? No, school start in September. So when's the trip? Trip is in August. I said, you got books y'all got to buy, right? Yeah. So how much are those books? I think it was about like $350. I said, so how much you asked me for this trip? She tell me. I said, so now you got to decide. You want the trip or you want the books? Now, I can give her the money, but I needed her to understand, I need you to make a decision. I need you to make a decision what's more important for you. Is it the books or is it this particular trip? And so that's how I've done it. But this ain't even kids. Remember, I said my parents living in my house. They called me. They wanted not the master bedroom, the second bathroom. They wanted a stand-up shower. And I was like, why y'all calling me? I was like, I don't live there. I don't care. Y'all want to do a stand-up shower. I was like, I don't care what y'all do. I hang the phone up. But then I go, damn that. So I called him back, Rodney, and I said, no, y'all ain't doing the shower. Mom and Dad like shocked. I said, hold up. I just moved y'all from Houston to Dallas. I just paid off y'all car. I just paid off 2/3 of your debt. I said, I just put $10,000 into a credit union account for the purpose of fixing major things around the house. I said, why are y'all about to do what you've done your entire life. Why are you about to create new debt? So I said, no, you're not going to do it. And I said, you have an opportunity. Because remember, they're like 62, 63. I said, you have an opportunity to restart anew. I said, get on good footing. Why create unnecessary debt? So I said, no, it's not going to happen. And those are the kind. So I mean, yeah, was I cold-blooded about it? I was. But that's how you have to have the conversations, and not keep making the exact same mistakes over and over and over again. That leads to us not being able to deal with it. These are the things as African Americans we have to be honest about when we do not have strong understanding of money, of resources, of decision making, and how our families didn't get in trouble. Because I'm sitting here thinking about my parents were 62, 63, when they're going to be 75 or 80. Who's taking care of them? Who's actually paying for that? So you want to spend some stuff now at 62 when I'm thinking about when you 82.
Now, the stories you're telling remind me of a story I've had in my book, Fixing the Wealth Gap. Dawn Kelly, who worked for Prudential for years, and she, when she was laid off, she started a restaurant in Queens, and she told me a story about when she was little, her mother basically made her write out the checks, so to pay the bills. So she knew how much everything cost. But she also said, I never asked for anything because I knew there was no money left.
Right.
Right? And that's the kind of lessons that we're missing.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, it's being open and honest. It's being open and honest about what things cost and in terms of how do we pay for things and stuff along those lines. And it's discipline. I mean, look, no one wants to think about death. No one wants to think about how that changes everything. But you have to think about that, because why be in a situation where we're constantly starting over? It's the same thing with black businesses. The reality is, in so many cases, we're starting black businesses and they're only surviving as long as the founder is here. You don't have proper succession plans. You don't have, look, when I ran the Chicago Defender, it's a perfect example. Robert Abbott builds the Chicago Defender up. He founds the paper, he builds it up, and says to his nephew, John Sinstack, you're going to be taking this paper over. John Sinstack comes to Chicago, finishes college. Robert Abbott positions it. Then when he's ready, you now have it. So Sinstack runs it. Sinstack takes it to the next level. Then Sinstack gets older. He's dying. His kids, grandkids, they can't take it over. Clearly not knowing how to run the business. Sinstack dies and leaves the whole thing all up in the air. So it's fighting, there's lawsuits, there's all kind of stuff like that. Then eventually it gets sold. But the reality is the true equity in the business was gone, was lost, and so it really made no sense whatsoever. That's one of the situations where a John Sinstack has to say, all right, if I don't have anybody in my family who can take this over, I need to sell it to someone who can keep it going and keep employees, their families. And that's the thing. That also, man, is what frustrates me, that we put blood, sweat, and tears into building it up. And all of a sudden, not planning, to your point, wills, estates, but not planning for that day when that founder is no longer here. And so we have to be in a constant, I mean, to me, this has to be like hammering every day. And using all of our platforms. So for me, my show, I got black-owned businesses featured every single Tuesday. I got black people in tech featured every single Wednesday. I got a segment called Where's Our Money? We're talking about, the $560 billion being spent every year by the federal government, and we're only getting 1.67% of all contracts. The $1 billion the federal government spends on advertising and black-owned media is getting $51 million. $322 billion being spent in general market, and black-owned media is only getting 0.5 to 1%. But I'm also educating the audience and walking them through, because that's what has to happen. We have to have our black newspapers, our black radio, black digital, black television, using the airwaves to teach people so they begin to understand how to buy their home, how to save, but also how not to get caught in the debt trap. Those are the discussions that we have to constantly have with people so they understand how that changes our businesses, how it changes us individually when it comes to money. And it's just, we simply, Rodney, just do not have enough dialogue on a daily basis about money.
Yes. And so let me make, my last question is going to be you speaking directly to millennials, your 2 best financial tips.
Oh.
Well, give me 3.
First thing.
Give me 3.
No, the first thing, stop quitting damn jobs thinking you're going to get another damn job that's paying it. I'm telling you, I have had more millennials just quit $70,000, $80,000 jobs because they didn't like one thing that happened. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I'm going, are you out of your mind? As if there's another job that's just waiting out there. That's first. The second thing is, see, I ain't never owned a pair of Air Jordans. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to stand outside a Foot Locker for hours for a new pair of Jordans. Ain't no way in hell. Spike Lee just interviewed me. I told him the same thing. He said, I'm going to have Mike send you some, because I had some Adidas on. He said, man, you got Adidas on? I said, I ain't got stock in Nike, and Mike ain't never sent me no pair of shoes. I said, I ain't got no damn loyalty to Michael Jordan or Nike. I said, so yeah, I'm wearing the Adidas that were given to me. You're absolutely right, I am. And he said, I'm going to have Mike see some. I said, that's the only way I'm going to wear them, because the thought of spending $200 on a pair of tennis, I ain't doing it, bro. I'm not doing it. Just not going to happen. And so that's the second thing I would tell millennials. Get that designer watch. Even when I bought the Sprinter, it hit me a month later. That was the first Mercedes I've owned. I'd never owned a Mercedes in my life. And then I went, and it's a tax write-off. That's what I said. So the second thing, get that brand loyalty crap out of your mind. Brands want you spending all of your money. The third thing, and this really applies to whether you white, you black, whatever, the bottle service mentality. The bottle service mentality. Why in the hell would you go to a club to buy a bottle of Tito's for $500 that costs $50? You going out, I'm dropping $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 going out, partying in the club, bottle service, when the actual cost of the alcohol you bought is $300. You just spent $3,500, $4,000 for what? To impress the folk you rolling with? That's also part of this. People have got to get out of this idea of, let me impress people around me, and I'm going to feel good about myself. I had a guy, I worked at CNN and WVN Radio, that came to Chicago, set my studio up. They were going to call a cab. I took him to the airport. We walk out. He said, oh, I thought you would have had a BMW or Mercedes. I was there. This Corolla going to get y'all ass to the airport the exact same way as the BMW. I said, this sucker gets 32 miles to the gallon. I said, man, let me explain something to you. I will roll up to a 5-star hotel for a black tie dinner, put this son bitch in valet in a heartbeat, and don't care what none of y'all think, because it's paid off. I don't care. People, that's the thing. You have to stop caring what other people are saying and doing, because when you're behind broke, they are not going to be cash apping you that money. When you can't pay your bills, you will not be able to find them to help you out. So stop trying to impress people and then recognize that you should be able to conserve, save your money, and then when you put that work in, going back to don't quit that job, when you work your behind off in your 20s and in your 30s, you'll put yourself in a position to have the kind of vacations you want in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. To go to the places that you want, and you don't even have to worry about it. To be able to sit here, and the other day, I wanted a nice maroon pair of golf shoes. I'm a Texas A&M graduate. They're custom golf shoes. They were $525. Bought them, didn't flinch, because of the work that I put in the last 20 years. That's what people have to understand, and that's the fundamental problem I'm seeing, because they're not getting that reality hit them in their face. And I'm like, yo, don't play those games in your 20s and 30s, and now you broke in your 40s, and now you like, damn, I can't get those 15, 20 years back. Precisely.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Roland Martin.
See, I give it raw. See, I give it raw. I ain't gonna sit here and even play around with it.
We appreciate you coming and talking to us.